right, today we're going to look at entity relationship diagrams. Let's find, there we go. And so we did a little background on it last time. This time we're going to actually get into it. Here's what we're going to do. I'm going to leave that up just in case I need it. This is an example I used to use years ago, and I think it's something we can probably get our head around and be able to flesh it out and to figure out. We're basically going to focus on a couple of things. We want to focus on the crow's foot notation that we talked about last time a little bit, and how entities are related to each other. All right, so let's do this. Let's use an example of a water department. Okay, you pay your water bill every month. Okay, the water department wants money from you. You pay the water bill. There's a billing cycle that happens in the water department. Let's do a little bit of analysis on that, and we'll simplify it a little bit. We're just gonna we'll make it simple so that we don't have to worry about it. So for a water department, here are some of the things, the entities that we're going to have to deal with. Every house has a meter. Every house has 1 meter. That meter is going to tie me to a customer. So I'm going to have a customer. Right? At the end of the month, I'm going to have somebody is going to go out and read the meter to figure out how much water you used. That reading is going to generate a bill. Right? And well, that'll be attached to the customer. I wonder if there's anything in here. We can expand that if we want to. But we have a meter, a customer, a reading, and a bill. Okay? Let's do this. All right, so if I have, I don't know what we want to start with. Let's start with customer. It doesn't matter where you start because everything should be connected in the end. Okay? So here's a customer. And that a customer, how are we going to identify the customer? We're the water department. Let's think about it. If you've ever called the phone company, the electric company, what's your account number, right? So they always say that while you're talking to the computer, they say, please have your account number ready. All right, so you have an account number. Okay? That customer has an account number. Now, if I'm also going to need to keep track of the meters, because as the water company, the way I connect with my customers is through the water meter in their house. Every house has a meter it clicks off how much water you're using up, and then they bill you based on how much you use. So each water meter will probably have a serial number. Now you notice I'm not using the terms we've been using, like I'm not using meter ID and customer ID, and that's okay. You know, if I have the choice, I would use customer ID, meter ID, but since the serial number makes more sense than meter ID, I go with that. I just have to make sure that I keep track of that. An account number makes more sense when I'm talking about customer.
Broad-based type
things.
Right?
Yeah. So in my customer, now this is a all right. Let's just leave that for a minute. Let's see. Then we also have reading. Once a month, somebody's going to come out to my house, and they're going to read the meter, write down something and punch it into a little handheld computer, how much water I used, and that will help me generate a bill. Okay? How are we doing so far? Anything missing?
I thought reading should file under meters.
So you want to connect, let's connect the things that have to be connected, right? So reading and meter. So I'm going to come out and read the meter at your house today. So that will be a meter that I'm going to read. Okay? That meter, is it the reading connected to the customer, or is the meter connected to the customer? Meter is connected to the customer. Now, we'll decide how that's going to work later on. And then, what is bills connected to?
Customer. Isn't the customer connected to bills?
Where does the information come from that creates the bill?
No reading.
Previous reading and then the next reading in between, so you get a different.
So I might have a reading ID. Here we go now. So that will be, might have a sample of that might be the month and then a serial number or something after that, something like that. And then here on my bill, I have a bill ID, billing ID.
So the reading would more likely be a composite of the serial number and like a month or something like that? Do we composite on it?
Oh, yeah, hold on, let me get a better idea for this. Instead of my bill ID, or maybe I would have a bill ID, but how am I, I'm going to have a reading ID, and reading ID here, reading ID there,
Address?
and then I might have a customer number, but I don't necessarily need it. All right, let's look at it this way. If I have a customer, if I have a meter, if I am a meter, how many customers can I be attached to?
One.
Minimum one.
Too many?
So I can have one and only one. So that means I'm going to have the customer ID or the account number as a foreign key in here. I could have connected these things two ways. I could have taken the meter number and put it in here, the serial number for the meter and put it in here, or I could put the account number in here. It depends. But what this allows me to do is, how many meters can a customer have? Think about it. Can I have more than one? So suppose you were a landlord and you had your own house and you were renting out an apartment building and you could have more than one meter, couldn't you?
But not for that customer, right?
If I'm the landlord and I own 5 houses,
I got you, because you're the customer till the actual water company.
the house belongs to me, therefore the meter is associated with my house, and let's say, just for the sake of argument, that my tenants don't have to pay for their water, just to make it simple. So I could have many. And now, be a customer, what's the minimum cardinality that I have for meters? Minimum. So, in other words, do I have to have a meter to be a customer, or can I be a customer without having a meter?
You gotta have at least 1 meter. So it's a 1 meter, right?
You must have, I'm guessing you probably become a customer as soon as you get assigned your first water meter, right? Right, so that means the minimum cardinality is 1. So just to review, so this is a mandatory 1, all right, then this is a mandatory many. So I have to, if I find a customer's account information in here, I must find one and only one matching customer account number in here. Does that make sense? If I find a customer's account number in the customer, I must find at least one in the meter. But I could find many meters with the same account number. Does that make sense? With me? So that basically says this, and the rules on this are, we're just defining also, that's one of the things that's subtle about this. When you make these assumptions, you are also establishing the rules for the data. You're establishing the rules. By making that a mandatory many, we are saying that you're not a customer until you get a meter. Just like, this is more of a common problem with patients and doctors. Can you be a patient of a doctor when you have not had an appointment? Some doctors' offices will say, we'll put you in our patient's file when you book your first appointment. Otherwise, no. Other doctors, and I think it's more common the other way, that sure, we'll put you on our list of patients and you call us when you want to make an appointment. So they know who you are. It's probably easier to do it that way because then you put in your insurance information and all that good stuff, and they have it on file. And you walked in, here I am, okay, good to see you again. Then off you go. So, but you are established based on what you decide for the minimum and maximum cardinalities of these relationships dictates how this information is going to behave. And how, more accurately, it dictates how the business is run. Okay? So, I have a customer who can have, must have at least one, but could have many meters under his or her name. And for each meter, that meter can only be assigned to one and only one customer. Now, they could have when I gave this example to a graduate level course, and I had a lot of fun with them, saying, well, what if I have a warehouse full of meters that haven't been assigned to customers yet? And, well, we're going to simplify this. I would ask them all kinds of questions that would drive them crazy. And then when they would just start to solve it, I'd ask another question, and then they'd go crazy for a little while longer. And, hey, this is only the water company. How hard can this be? And they're like, oh, this will take us 10 minutes. It would take us 2.5 hours, like a 3-hour night class or something. But every time they think they get it nailed down, well, wait a minute, what about this? What about that? You can ask enough questions to make this thing really, really complicated, but I won't do that to you.
So your meters, so you can have basically, each meter is going to only have one account number, is that correct?
Each meter is assigned one account number.
So you can literally have 7 meters, they can all have the same account number,
They could.
all right?
Yep, because each account number can have multiple meters.
Several homes.
Right, so if you were a landlord and you had an apartment building, and we're assuming that the landlord is going to pay for the water. Not realistic in Florida, but if that were the case, all those meters would be in the landlord's name. So all the water bills.
So database-wise, you can actually have meter, serial number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and like 6 of them in a row, and they all have the same account number next to them.
Yep.
Okay. When you pull that account number up, it's also going to do vice versa. It's going to pull out all the meters, right? So you have one account number that many meters pull up.
Right, but I won't have a meter number in the customer account number. I mean, the customer file won't have a meter number in there, because the way that relationship works is the account number is over in the meters file, and that account number shows up multiple times. Different records, 1 record, 2 records, 3 records, 4 records. So Elm Street, Main Street, Maple Street, all the houses you own on those streets are separate records, separate meters.
So when I put my customer account number, the customer number, then it won't show the serial number under that either.
In here?
Yeah.
No.
It just strictly show the account number.
It's going to have your account number, it's going to say Marcus, it's going to say where you live, it's going to say,
But it won't have a meter number or anything. Gotcha.
because the account number, which is a primary key, is going to be over here, is going to be a foreign key in this table. Bless you. So this account number can repeat, as we've shown by our cardinality there. Get that? See how this works? And like I said, this does dictate how the data is stored. I could have done it the other way around, and if I confuse you by this, I'll let it go. I could have said, instead of putting the account number here, I could have put the serial number over here. In which case, I would have the serial number for that this would have allowed the customer only to have one serial number. So you would only be allowed to have one water meter in your name, which is probably not realistic. And I would not have had the account number over here. Now I think that makes for some funny things, because then it says that the meter could be assigned to more than one person, because there was nothing preventing that meter number from showing up under 2 or 3 different customers. So I think the way we did it makes more sense. Customer account number gets assigned to a meter, so every meter has one person that is responsible for it. Make sense? All right, so if I have the meter here, what would I use to make that relate to the readings?
What, the meter?
Mm-hmm.
Serial number?
Would you use the serial number? I suppose you could. Could I use the account number? Maybe.
Serial number would do better because it's unique. You can never go wrong with record a unique number.
So the serial number, let's make that a primary key. That's a primary key there. So then if I put the serial number in here, let's start thinking about that, how that works. And this is how the process unfolds. When you're designing a system, and this is very much a design tool, you're asking yourself questions. I always tell students, and I'll tell you guys too, ask dumb questions. Get used to asking dumb questions, because you can learn a lot by asking what seems like the dumbest question, but then all of a sudden you go, well, wait a minute, it's not as simple as we first thought. There might be some exceptions to the rule. It might be different than we first thought. Maybe it's not as simple as we thought. So in here, we have a reading ID. I guess we're going to keep that as a primary key. And then we have a serial number for the meter that was read.
Well, you have to identify it for that customer because if they sell their home or use the meter at a different place for some reason, then when you search it, how will you identify between the different?
Well, they probably aren't going to take the meter out of your house and put it in his house. Probably.
It's a possibility.
I've never seen it, but I guess it's, huh?
It's a lot of digging and rewiring.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The meter is permanent to a structure.
Unless it fails, then they replace it with something, and then, yeah. I think my parents' house, they had a meter installed in it in 1959. I think it's still there. So probably, I've never heard of anybody taking a meter out of one house and then putting it in another house. And I guess if they did that, they would sort of,
Science major, so.
you know what?
Recycling and environmental.
Okay, cool. Well, if they did that, then they would go through a process like this. They would unassign the meter from this customer, and maybe put it into the warehouse, and then put the new meter in, and then reassign it then. Maybe that. So in any event, when they come to read the meter, as long as there's a connection between that meter and that customer, we're good. So this serial number being a foreign key, now in that readings table, how many am I going to ask this? As the water department, how are we going to handle readings? Let's start from there.
Send someone out.
Hmm?
Send someone out.
Send someone out. How many times are they going to do it?
Once a month.
Once a month. So they're going to do this more than once. So you need to, so are we going to have a way of distinguishing between this month's reading and last month's reading and next month's reading? And
That's where the reading ID comes in, right? It's going to be different every month, right?
so it would probably be, I think we said something like the month, the year, and maybe some serial number after that, as long as it's something that would uniquely identify it. Now, that would give us, excuse me,
So you're going to have a repeat of addresses, a repeat of basically readings in that chart. So you're going to have, in 1 year, you're going to have 12 different readings for each individual account.
right.
It's
So,
pretty big for that one table.
so when I, excuse me, when I make a reading and I figure out what the serial number is, when I come back over here, how many meters should that reading be associated with?
One.
One. One and only one? Right? Here is serial number is a primary key in this table. And it's going to be used as a foreign key over here. So if I have a meter and I want to see the history of readings for that meter, what's the maximum number of readings? Is it 0, 1, or many?
Many.
Many. If it's 2, it's many, right? So I'm going to have many possible readings. Now here's one that gets a little sticky, and this is probably
Should it be an optional?
would it be optional? Is it possible to have a meter that's never been read?
Yeah.
When?
I mean, when you install it, would you do a reading the first install? Wouldn't you have to wait a month in order to do so?
Probably right. Yeah.
I guess there wouldn't be a reading.
So if the thing will say there's all zeros on it, right? So that you know you don't need to read it because you know it's starting at 0. You come back 30 days after you install it, and yeah, there's your first reading. So there's a possibility that you could have a meter that's in service that has not been read yet. If it's even a possibility, you have to do it that way. If it's, like I always say, if it's 2, it's many. If even the possibility exists of 0, you got to go with 0. You got to go with 0 because it dictates how this all works. So if that's the case, then I have, so my reading ID is my primary key in my readings table, and then I have in my bill, how is that going to work? I have it related to a reading.
So that reading ID, that's 2 primaries? It's going to be primary reading and primary bills?
Or would you want to send the whole account to the customer, like all of their readings? Would it be on one bill, or would they send it separate bills?
I think it would be he said every month they're going to come out and read the meeting, read the meter. And then at that point, that reading will generate a bill, which will be sent to the customer.
Right, but if the customer has several accounts or several meters under their account, would you do all the reading IDs? Like, how would that work?
I think I get what you're saying. So if you have like 7 different meters, are you going to generate a bill for each meter, or are you going to get one bill that actually has all 7 meters on it?
Right. So wouldn't the bill be by account number, and then you would relate it to the readings or something? It would have to be generated by the account, because if you have several meters.
Because you only got one account number still, right, with all the meters. So would you actually put the account number over the bills and make that like a composite? The reading ID plus the account number?
Right.
Maybe that would generate one bill, wouldn't it, at that point?
Right, because my mom has several different condos, and she has Bright House, and they give her one bill for all of them. They don't send her separate bills for each place. They give her one bill, she's got different boxes in each place. And I think that each place has kind of its own different meter, because each place racks up its own bill, and then they formulate a bill statement at the end of the month.
So in your case, the Bright House example, you are able to accumulate based on all the, so you have one account,
One account and then
but three different properties, and they're able,
Each property has kind of like what each accrued that month. And then
So-
she just writes one check to Bright House.
So each one has its own meter.
Right, so essentially,
One account
like,
reads
each
one.
property has its own meter. Wouldn't the account holder just want one bill?
I would think so.
It's like 1 a minute, like you have right there.
So how
But-
would you associate the readings with the account number? Would you do like reading ID for that month and then account number? Or what?
If you click on the serial number under reading, it's going to take you over there to the meter. And then if you click under the account number, it takes you to the customer's account, right? So that's working backwards.
What you could do is the reading ID will, so let's say the reading, let's give a sample reading ID number. So if we were going to have a reading for this month,
OCT.
we might have 10-2016, or maybe the other way around. You go by year, so you they'll group by 2016, 10, and then some number after that. Yeah. So this is for the reading, and maybe you would have the account number in here, whatever that account number is, which would give you a long number for the reading, but it would be unique. Or maybe the serial number, which would work, because then you would have the year and the month, which you're only going to do one reading a month. And so here's the October 2016 reading for a particular meter. I'm going to go with the meter because I'm going to read your meter and your meter and your meter, and these are your tenants, right? So you're going to read the meters for them, and then they're all going to be on one bill. So you're going to have a different reading for each serial number, for each meter. You need to distinguish between, but you have the serial number there. So, all right, let's see how it goes. We can always change it later. All right, so now over here, it sounds like at some point, we're going to need the account number if we're going to do what you said and accumulate all the different properties into one bill. We would need to do that, and that's easy enough to do if you have the account number stored over here.
So that now ties that into customer. So account number is now foreign to customer.
Doesn't need to be, because we can get to customer through there.
So basically, it's okay if so there's no referential integrity at that point. So we delete the account number over here. It's not going to delete the entire bill. It'll still keep the bill because there's no referential integrity between the account number, right?
Through here?
No, from the customer in the bill.
Yeah.
So you see how the account number is actually a foreign, it could be a foreign in bills. So by not actually assigning it a referential integrity, if we delete account number from customer, it won't delete the entire row out of bills, correct? So there's no referential integrity between the two.
If you delete the customer,
The account number
the account number
out of customer,
out of here.
it will not touch the bill. The bill's top right.
All right, yeah, because it stops here. And
There's
so,
no connection right there, right?
so I'm thinking like you're thinking. I think there's got to be a link there.
Right.
Just because it's easier when you have the bill in your hand to do a lookup and find the address of where you're going to mail it.
Right, because the account number brings customer, right? And vice versa, if you now delete, it will now allow you to delete the account number out the bills page, which deletes that entire row of that account for a bill, unless you delete the entire customer out your file, right?
Yep. So let's do that relationship first. If I find the account number over here, how many should I find over here?
One.
One and only one. Here's the hint. That's a primary key. So if the field that you're relating by is a primary key in a particular table, that's a 1-1 mandatory 1 relationship. So over on this side, if I have an account number here and I find an account number in bills, how many times can that account number appear? 0, 1, or many?
One.
Many, because you're going to get a bill every month, right? You can get a many here. Now, what's the minimum cardinality?
I guess optional at that point, just as the readings, because you might not have sent bill yet.
Right, because if you, that's a good point. If I have a meter that it hasn't had a reading, if I haven't had a reading, I haven't had a bill. So that would go there. So that tells me that if I have a reading, how many bills do I generate from a reading? Yeah, 1. It's at least 1.
So a mandatory many, one, or one many, or whatever. So a line and.
Like that?
Yeah.
One reading can generate many bills. I guess if they don't pay their bill this month, then last month's reading goes on this month's bill. It is associated with 2 different bills. So I guess that could happen. And then,
They don't cut it off until, 3 months, so we'll send a bill 3 times, and each bill might have an extra fee associated with it.
oh, I bet it does. I bet it does. All right, so now if I find a reading number in the bill over here,
So you're saying you have one reading to many bills?
what I'm saying is, if let's say I go out to your house and I do a reading on your water meter, all right, and then I write you a bill for that, and you're out of town, and you don't get the bill until you come back a month later. So now I've already sent you out another bill that has that meeting on it, this month's reading plus last month's reading.
Oh, yeah, true.
So that one reading for October shows up on 2 bills, which is what we show here.
Yeah. But would it be the same bill, or would it be generating a different bill?
Well, because it's generating a different bill, because I'm reading it for this, I'm going to read it
That
for
would be like
2,
4 bills, and then you have a whole other bill of like.
So I do my reading, here's my reading numbers, right? Readings. All right, so I do my reading for 2016 for October,
Right.
and I send you a bill for it. That's not paid. I do my November reading, and I accumulate a bill, and then there's the past 2 balance, which is a reading that I did for October, so that reading could show up on a second bill as a past 2 balance.
So then a bill could be associated with many readings, because if that first bill wasn't paid, and then you have the 2
That would be correct.
readings, you know what I mean?
That could be. So it's what she's saying, if that's the case, then in that second bill, now you have that one bill that has 2 readings on it.
Right.
Because it has a prior month reading, plus it has the current month reading, which is a mini, is that correct?
Right.
Did I say I was going to make this easier than...
Jesus, man.
I
tried. I really tried.
I like thinking one.
Well, we've been at this about 35 minutes, and we're almost done. At this point, we were not even here. In my graduate class, sometimes your professors have a lot of fun watching you guys argue in class. They do, and it's more than just sort of it's not a diabolical sort of fun. It is a little sometimes diabolical, but you do learn stuff by arguing stuff. Well, what about this and what about that?
Help you, it broadens your horizon.
Sure.
Because if you don't think.
Fires those
if you don't think
synapses.
the same,
Right, you don't want to all think the same.
That would be boring.
That bill to reading has to be a 1 to many though, correct? It can't be a 0 many, right? Because you're not gonna get a bill without a reading,
Right.
vice versa. So it has to be a 1 to many, correct? From the bill to the reading.
Each bill can have multiple,
Readings, but it has to, you have to have at least one reading.
Oh, so you're saying that only one reading,
You see, because
because you wouldn't have multiple of that same reading? That
Well, no,
reading,
it's
that
gonna have, it
reading?
can have 2, like for instance, the October, November. So the bill can have one in October, November on it, so that's why it's a many there.
Right.
But
yeah, that's why that many.
Right, when you go from bill to reading, it has to be a 1 to many, right? Because you can't have a bill generated if there's no reading.
Each reading number is unique. So if I find a reading number over here, even if I find it on multiple bills, when that comes back over here,
So this is 1 to many.
It's going to be a 1 and 1,
A 1 and 1?
because it's a primary key. I see a reading number over here.
Yeah.
I trace it back.
Yeah, because it's only one reading ID. So when you go to grab from the bill, to grab a reading ID, you're only grabbing it once.
Right. And if it shows up on more than one bill, then that reading ID will show up on 2 bills.
Right. Because it's essentially, the bill is grabbing one reading. It can grab like other readings, but it's not grabbing that reading more than once. Is that what you're saying?
And even though you can have 2 readings on one bill because you have a past due balance,
Right.
you are only finding that reading is unique. You have 2 readings on the bill. This would be more like if you really wanted to do it, you'd have like bill detail if you really want to get more.
Right, there'd be a
Right.
form for it.
You know, and here I have reading 1, reading 2 associating with that. Kind of like when those old forms in the hardware stores has your name on the top, and then it's got, 1, and then the quantity, and 2, and then 3 and 4, and then they'd write out the invoice right there for you.
That's like bill stuff, that's the sub thing they're talking about.
The sub form
Yeah.
that you guys did on the, what was it, the art course thing? Was it that sub
This,
form?
on this here, that, this sub form, basically where that's either a yes or no. If they're passed through, not the pass through, you go down to bill detail.
Well, the bill, this bill detail, I'm not going to put it in here, but the bill detail would have all the different,
Sometimes.
I kind of made it work.
a sub form, yeah. But, yeah, and a bill of any kind, just look at your cable bill. God almighty. I made the mistake of going through in detail my cable bill. They've got fees for everything on there. You got a internet access fee, $3 here, $2 there, county fee, state, FCC fee.
Happy fee.
God.
So let me ask you, so if you have a bill out there, right, it has a reading ID on it, right? Your reading ID matches that bill, right? So let's say the reading ID is the 2016 November with the serial number behind it, okay? So when you pull that bill up, it still has 2 reading IDs on it. It's October's reading ID and November's reading ID on that bill.
Yep.
So how is that a 1-to-1 still? You have 2 reading ID numbers on that bill. How's that a 1-to-1 for the bill to read?
Because when I find this reading ID over here on the bill,
This is October, November, what it is.
yeah, it goes back to a single record for a reading on here.
Yeah, it's just
Even
grabbing
though it
one
includes,
record.
even though it's inclusive of October bill, it's actually just going back to November.
They're 2 separate readings.
Yeah.
I have a reading for October and a reading for November. My reading for October gets sent to the billing department. They send you a bill, you don't pay it. So then you have a past due balance. So when I do my reading for November, these 2 readings are separate because you use 10,000 gallons here and you use 10,300 gallons here.
Right.
Separate.
Yeah, so when the bill goes to grab that, it's grabbing those 2 separate reading IDs.
But each one is unique.
Yeah,
Okay.
Okay?
so it can only grab it once for that one bill, right? Is that what you're saying?
It grabs it for a bill. It might go back and grab it again,
Right.
but it's
Only
unique.
one, yeah.
Still gonna go back to the same reading, either way it goes.
Yep.
Still gonna go back to that one reading, no matter if it's on 10 bills or not, that ID is still gonna bring you back to that same
Yeah.
reading.
Right, so the way the bill is generated in general terms is I'm going to send out a bill for the October reading, and then if that doesn't get paid, I'm going to send out a bill for the October as a past due balance and the November reading.
Doesn't matter what other bills is on, it's still got that same reading. Doesn't
Yep,
matter.
same reading. Same information, still 10,000 gallons, still costs $40 or whatever it is, and there you go. You guys are getting it.
Yeah, it's fun.
There's multiple bills with account number, from customer to account number.
The customer's account number is going to show up more than once because your bill for November is going to have your account number assigned to it, and your bill for October did, and September did, and so on.
So the bill is the tricky part. That's when the tricky. Everything else is actually just very simple. The bills, when you got many, and see what.
Yeah, that's when it starts to get kind of.
Yeah, because
When we-
bills do multiple ones.
Yeah.
When we got to here, I was, thinking on the fly, was I going to carry the account number all the way through to here and then to here? But I didn't, and the reason being because of the serial number being your primary key here, it's easier because this account number won't be unique. Because it's unique here, it's not unique here. Serial number is unique here, not unique here. Reading ID is unique here, not unique here. Okay? And usually, you don't see an enclosed circle when you're doing an entity relationship diagram. You don't normally need that. And sometimes, depending, I think if it's a triangle, I think it actually locks the data up. It's sort of like a catch-22. It keeps going around and around and around until it can't move. I think the triangle one doesn't, but this isn't a triangle. But sometimes this circular references can bind up the data so that it's overly restrictive and it can't move. Move is sort of a general term. I can't generate reports because everything's dependent. This is dependent on this, dependent on this, dependent on this, dependent on this. Get that? So and once you make that circle, you're like, what happened? Is anybody familiar with Excel?
Good thing to keep it enclosed.
No, you don't. Normally, you don't see the enclosed loop. You could.
In a triangle, though.
Yeah, the triangle. I think the triangle is the one that's the problem.
You don't need it closed.
You don't. And if you wanted to, you could take this link out, the one between customer and bill, and you could access everything you needed to know about the customer by going through the reading, to the serial number, to the account number, and back to the customer. But that would give you a separate bill for every meter, because you're only billing for one reading. So there's a sort of internal process going on over here. We're going to take all our readings, we're going to generate bills for those readings, and we're going to group them by account number. So I might have, if I've got 5 properties, I might have 5 meter readings, and I'm going to have it on one bill. Using the example you gave, which I think works pretty well. If I were the landlord, I would want to have one bill.
Yeah, or like,
And I think if I was the water company too, I wouldn't want to mail out 5 bills if I could get away with it. Any questions? You guys did good.
Is there any way we could make that, actually, I guess you could. Is there any way, even though we have multiple ones for the reading to the bills, now we have a 1 mini on there, is there any way that we could make that a 1-to-1 for the reading, so that it does only read that one, and then print out all the bills? It's like, so if we got 7 months of bills, regardless, you're still gonna get one bill. They say it still reads that reading, so I guess that reading ID would kind of need to be made like almost like an account number almost, right? Where it doesn't change every month. It's just it's a stasis, it's a static reading number.
Well,
And if you did it that way, then at that point it would link it to that one.
these 2 numbers I invented up here for readings are 2 separate readings.
Right.
It's not the same reading adjusted. If you were to make this a 1-to-1 relationship,
Yeah, that way you would get one bill for that one actual reading ID, which brings it back to the multiple meters.
right, but I think the problem is that if they didn't pay the bill, you wouldn't be able to get back to it again. It would cause a problem that way. They didn't pay it, you say, well, you're out of luck, too bad.
Right, I see what you're saying.
So anyway, but this is an interesting exercise. In fact, even when you simplify it, so to speak, because it does make you think about how the data relates to the other components, the other entities.
So how do they do that? Because right now, the way we got it set up where after the first month, they're gonna get one bill. After the first month, they're gonna get multiple bills. So they're gonna bill every month from that point. That's why we have multiple bills coming out, right? But even like she said, a mother had it set up where no matter if she's on month 1 or month 8, she still only gets that one bill for all the meters.
Yeah, and that's the way we set this one up.
That one's set up that way right now? It looks
Yep.
like to me like,
Well, there's a sort of a process that goes on in here
okay.
that groups it by account number.
yeah,
'Cause
that's just gonna be that bill, like, that's gonna go on to a whole different.
And what I'm thinking here is that this reading is going to have to access the account number through the meter and then pass that on, or so through this relationship is going to have to pass it on to here. And it could do that. And then, so you get the account number here, and then that, once you have the account number, that's repeating. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 properties with the same account number for October. Group them by account number, right? If you sort anything by a repeating field, it automatically groups all those like values together. And then you just do that and summarize the bill. Just print out all the different pages. Make sense? Good. After a while, you kind of get a sense for how this is going to fit. So if you took a different example, take students over here, all right, and then the schedules, the courses they sign up for, and then this is when they sign up and the courses they have to pick from. Okay. Now what you find out is you have this relationship here and here. All right. One student, all right, student ID. So student ID. And then I have a course ID over here. All right. That comes. And I have a course ID over here. So in here, each course can have many students signed up for it, but probably needs to have at least one. And over here, each student can sign up for many courses and probably needs to be signed up for one. You could also make those optional. Want to do a different one?
That's scheduled, though, right? That was scheduled.
Yeah, schedule. How about this? You start to see a pattern after a while. Patient, appointment, doctor. Right? Patient wants to see a doctor. The relationship isn't with the doctor, because I could go see 2 different doctors, and then and the doctor's going to see many patients. So that's a many-to-many relationship. So I decide to call the office. And my patient ID gets put in there for Wednesday at 9 o'clock. And I'm going to see this doctor ID. So the relationship between me and the doctor. So I may make many appointments over the course of my lifetime with the doctor. So my ID is going to show in there many times. And I could be an optional. I call the doctor and say, are you accepting patients? Yes, we are. I'll put you in the patients list. You call us when you want to make an appointment. My patient ID has to come back here and should be unique, right? Unique to me, so that my records are safe. Now the doctor, he's going to see many patients and probably should at least see one. Probably shouldn't have a doctor that hasn't seen any. And if the patient has a question about, well, back in January I had an appointment with one of the doctors, I don't remember his name, could you tell me some question about that? Or you just go back to the appointments calendar to January, find out the appointment, and find out, oh yeah, she was that doctor, and there you go. See the similarities? Right?
You can have multiple schedules?
How many courses you signed up for?
Okay, so I'm sorry, I'm thinking schedule as one entity that has all
No.
courses.
Yeah, and scheduling is when you schedule a student for a course.
Gotcha, okay, so you're looking at that way, I'm looking at like a whole schedule being
No.
one entity. Okay,
No, so your schedule would be, five records.
gotcha, makes sense.
Got it? You see the similarity? Usually what you have is some object, and some transaction. Make it a hair salon, customer, hairstylist, appointment. Make it a vet clinic, dog or pet name, doctor, appointment. There's this, you see this a lot. You're in a car dealership, customer, salesperson, vehicle.
Blender.
Yeah, all but you see it's a common structure that you see. You have 2 objects related, especially if they are many to many, and then you break the many to many apart by making some kind of a transaction or association table.
How does this help us, I guess, when we're doing the actual database? Because when we're extending this up on paper, we do that. But when we go into the database, how are we setting these up? These are not referential integrity, right? So how is that when we're setting a database, so how is that gonna affect us making this database?
Well, this helps you with design.
Okay,
Referential integrity is something that you'll deal with down the road.
right,
All right, when you get into the more detailed design. But the basic, what you're trying to do is to identify the basic relationships between different entities, and that's where you're at. That's where this is.
so once we got that, basically, when we start implementing or actually putting the data modules inside the system, is there, when we look at our chart like this, are we gonna look at it and say, okay, well, we gotta make sure that this can accept multiple entries, or this one can't accept multiple entries? Is that what that's made for, basically? I guess my question is, how do we,
Right. Well, you think about how is a patient related to appointments?
right?
You start asking questions. You say, okay, I need to figure out, is it one, the relationships are based on 0, 1, or many.
Right.
So if it's 2, it's many.
Right.
So my relationship between patients and appointments, can a patient have more than one appointment?
Right.
Yes. So the maximum is that it can have many appointments. So for each appointment, how many patients can be assigned to it? 1. So that points back to a particular patient. It gets a little bit fuzzy when you say, can I be a patient without an appointment? In other words, can I have my patient information in the patient's table and not have any links to the patient found in the appointments table?
So I guess my question would be is now, if we got a one-to-one, right? So I get that part. So if you got a one-to-one relationship, right? So which means that you're telling it that it can't have more than one relationship to it, right? Basically, like you said, patient to, appointment to doctor. There only can be one appointment for each doctor, right? How do you let the system know that?
No,
when you're-
that each appointment can only have one doctor.
Right. So when you're doing.
It's different than the other way around.
I'm sorry, each appointment can have one doctor.
Yep.
Right? So when you're doing that in the system, how do you let the system know that only one appointment can be with one doctor?
Because the doctor's ID is a primary key,
Right?
and you put it in here as a foreign key. By making those definitions, you then assert that relationship. You make sure that, because if I find the doctor's ID over here, and I use the relationship to find out what the person's name is, I'm only going to find one. So there's the one, because I'm going to use the primary key
Oh, right.
to look that person
You
up.
can only have one primary key.
Right, so I know ahead of time that it's going to be unique. I'm only going to find one, and I'm going to find one. There's your referential integrity, and I'm only going to find only one.
Yeah, that kind of goes back to the meters and the meter readings. You're only going to find one meter reading.
Right.
So when you go back to grab it, that information, you're only going to find one meter reading.
And that's important, is the drawing that when you know we grab, we drop. Like customer ID, that's what you're doing at that point in time. Telling this one is only gonna have one of these, basically, you're, at that point in time, you're saying that these two can coexist only by having that relationship with each other.
Right, and the fact that Microsoft built, one of the few things I think that Microsoft built that was really, really good is that relationship screen looks conspicuously like an entity relationship diagram. It's not perfect, but it does give you some simple, when you put referential integrity in, it does give you the one and the many side.
Really?
So, but that, going from this to that is it's a small step, because you're just going to make that thing look like this thing, and what I always tell students is, stick with this and refine this and make sure you got this right before you go putting it into the system, because if you make a change to this, and let's say I make a change and I want to insert some table in between doctors and appointments, whatever that is, it's so easy to just take my little eraser and just erase this little line here and redraw it this way, right, and then do something like this. How long did that take? 30 seconds? If you have that already built in Access,
You have to go reprogram all that?
you've got to unbolt all those
That would
relationships.
not be fun.
No, it's not fun. Unbolt all those relationships,
Explain why Access is so awesome.
and then put it in a new table, and then bolt this one to this one and this one to that. It takes hours.
Right.
So if you've got it, when I was in graduate school, I had a professor who said, don't get prematurely physical with your computer. Leave it alone. The more time you spend on the drawing board, the less time you'll spend on the computer. Really. It just, and I think he was right. I think he was right personally.
So is there a difference between the relationship and referential integrity? Is there a difference between that?
No, referential integrity is a part of the relationship.
So when you draw a line, you create a relationship there, and that states basically that these two must coexist at that point, right?
Right. So if I'm a patient in the patient's table and I leave and I have an appointment coming up, they also have to delete the appointment because I'm not coming in. Right?
That's the relationship, or is that the referential?
That's referential integrity. If this is no longer in that table, then it can't be here because it's not pointing back to anything.
So delete the entire row.
I'm going to take out all the appointments. And usually what it does is they archive it. They have all the appointments for that patient. They'll archive it. And what it does is it builds a medical records file so that if you ever call that office and say, I need my records from when I was a patient at that clinic, they have it in sort of an archive where they have you identified as an old patient, not an active patient, and then all that appointment information, is linked in here, and you go and you grab all that old stuff.
Gotcha. So when you draw the line, you're actually creating a relationship.
Mhm.
Then when you click on that box, that's actually the integrity part, saying that this one can't exist without this one.
Right.
Correct?
Right.
And then when you draw that line relationship, does that actually create any perimeters at all? Or that just basically drag and drop that one? Does that create any perimeters, basically saying that something hasn't happened with these two? Or what is it basically telling them?
It just basically says it's going to look for a value in this field that matches a value in that field. So if my patient ID is 123, all right, and that's mine, and that's unique, that means I'm going to look over here, and when I make an appointment, I'm going to have a 123 in there. And this 123 is going to look for this one.
Gotcha. They'll automatically,
Mm-hmm.
will that one automatically put that one in there? So if I make a
No, it doesn't automatically. I'm already in here as a patient, and they put me in 1, 2, 3, and they put all my information, Blue Cross, Blue Shield, all that stuff, and then I make an appointment. So they pick me from the list, and it takes a 1, 2, 3 and puts it in the appointments table. So now I have the same values in two different tables, and they are part of the same relationship. So this 1, 2, 3 links back to this 1, 2, 3.
That was my question, because I didn't know when they went to the appointment table, how are you going to memorize everybody's patient ID number?
Pick them from a
Go
list.
to the patient ID number table first, click on that one, which is going to actually be the number that you're relating to that person, and then go into the appointment table and put that information in.
Yeah, and realistically, when you're going to make an appointment for somebody, you're going to pick them from a list because you have to, because it's referential integrity. If I have a patient ID over here, it's got to reflect back. It's going to be one of the patients that are already in our list,
Right.
right? So, and I'm not an expert on medical software at all, but I would bet you, and if I were designing one, I would say the person sitting at the desk gets on the phone, hello, so-and-so doctor's office, I'd like to make an appointment. Okay, what's your name? Find them somehow, what's your social security number or whatever it is, look them up, oh, here you are, boom, select that, then have the system grab whatever ID it has to and plunk it in the appointments table,
Do it by social security.
social security number. So
You're going to look that up and then to have a link.
it'll put you in for 9 o'clock on Wednesday,
So I already got the
and you're going to be seeing Dr. Who.
Some of the different tables, the patient table and the appointment table is different. So by clicking on that one in the patient table, is that basically set up through basically the designer that once you click on it, it automatically takes you to the appointment table? But they usually have to bring the appointment table up themselves and mention that.
What they do is they bring up a screen, and they just want to grab information, and they'll assign it to the tables they need to. But you pick the patient because you recognize, hi, my name is Joan Smith, and they recognize Joan Smith, and they got her social security number, and they got it.
Okay.
So by just hitting that and selecting her, the system takes the social security number and puts it
To the appointment.
in the appointment
So
table.
that's what I was asking about, how that transaction work clicking that to go into the other table.
And then we'll ask, well, so what doctor do you want to see? Do you have a favorite or whatever? Oh, I'm going to go see Dr. X. And so it pulls up the list of doctors. And they scroll down, they find Dr. X, and they take his ID and they put it in the same record side by side with your patient ID. And now you're connected to that doctor.
More of software programming, it does that, and it makes, once you click that button, it takes that information and brings it over to that next table. That more software programming.
There's a little bit of a program running.
Database doesn't do that, right? They just create the actual table.
Yeah, once the data's in there, then the database takes over and makes the relationships work.